Part 1 of the ingenious gentleman Don Quixote of La Mancha. Chapter 1. Somewhere in La Mancha, and in a place whose name I do not care to remember, a gentleman lived not long ago, one of those who had a lance and ancient shield and on a shelf, and keeps a skinny nag and a greyhound for racing. An occasional stew, beef more often than lamb, hash most nights, eggs and abstinence on Saturdays, lentils on Fridays, sometimes squab as a treat on Sundays. These consumed 3/4 of his income. The rest went for a light woolen tunic and velvet breeches and hose of the same material for feast days, while weekdays were honored with dune-colored coarse cloth. He had a housekeeper past 40, a niece not yet 20, and a man of all work who did everything from saddling the horse to pruning the trees. Our gentleman was approximately 50 years old. His complexion was weathered, his flesh scrawny, his face gaunt, and he was an very early riser and a great lover of the hunt. Some claim that his family name was Quixote or Quejada, for there is a certain amount of disagreement among the authors who write of this matter, although reliable conjecture seems to indicate that his name was Quijana. But this does not matter very much to our story. In its telling, there is absolutely no deviation from the truth. And so let it be said that this aforementioned gentleman spent his times of leisure, which meant most of the year, reading books of chivalry with so much devotion and enthusiasm that he forgot almost completely about the hunt and even about the administration of his estate. And in his rash curiosity and folly, he went so far as to sell acres of arable land in order to buy books of chivalry to read. And he brought as many of them as he could into his house, and he thought none was as fine as those compared by the worthy Feliciano de Silva, because the clarity of his prose and the complexity of his language seemed to him more valuable than pearls, in particular when he read the declarations and missives of love, where he would often find written the reason for the unreason, to which my reason turns so weakens my reason, that with reason I complain of thy beauty. And also when he read, the heavens on high divinely heighten thy divinity with stars and make thee deserving of the debtors thy greatness deserves. With these words and phrases, the poor gentleman lost his mind, and spent sleepless nights trying to understand them and extract their meaning, which Aristotle himself, if he came back to life for only that purpose, would not have been able to decipher or understand. Our gentleman was not very happy with the wounds that Don Bellianis gave and received, because he imagined that no matter how great the physicians and surgeons could cure him, he would still have to face his face and entire body covered with scars and marks. But even so, he praised the author for having concluded his book with the promise of an unending adventure, and he often felt the desire to take up his pen and give it to the conclusion promised there, and no doubt he would have done so, and even published it, if no other greater and more persistent thoughts had not prevented him from doing so. He often had discussions with the village priest, who was a learned man, a graduate of Siguenza, regarding those who had been the greater knight, Palmerind of England, or Amadis of Gaul. But Master Nicholas, the village barber, said that none was an equal of the Knight of Phoebus, and if any could compare to him, it was Don Galaler, the brother of Amadis of Gaul, because he was so moderate in everything. A knight was not affected, not as weepy as his brother, and incomparable in questions of courage. In short, our gentleman became so caught up in reading that he spent his nights in reading from dusk till dawn, and his days reading from sunrise to sunset, and so with too little sleep and too much reading his brains dried up, causing him to lose his mind. His fantasy filled with everything he had read in his books, enchantments as well as combats, battles, challenges, wounds, courtings, loves, torments, and other impossible foolishness. And he became so convinced in his imagination of the truth of all countless grandiloquent and false inventions he had read that for him no history in the world was truer. He would say that El Cid Roy Diaz had been a very good knight, but could not compare to Amadis, the knight of the blazing sword, who with a single backstroke cut two ferocious and colossal giants in half. He was fonder of Bernardo del Carpio, because Roncesvalles he had killed the enchanted Roland by availing himself of the tactic of Hercules when he crushed Antaeus, the son of Earth, in his arms. He spoke highly of the giant Morgante because, although he belonged to the race of giants, all of them haughty and lacking in courtesy, he alone was amiable and well-behaved. But more than any of the others, he admired Reynaldos de Montalban, above all when he saw him emerge from his castle and rob anyone he met, and when he crossed the sea and stole the idol of Mohammed and made of olive gold, as recounted in his history. He would have traded his housekeeper and even his niece for the chance to strike a blow at the traitor Guenelon. The truth is that when his mind was completely gone, he had the strangest thought of any lunatic in the world ever had, which was that it seemed reasonable and necessary to him, both for the sake of his honor and of his service to his nation, to become a knight errant and travel the world with his armor and his horse to seek adventures and engage in everything he had read the knights errant engaged in, righting all manner of wrongs, and by seizing the opportunity and placing himself in danger and ending those wrongs, winning eternal renown and everlasting fame. The poor man imagined himself already wearing the crown, worn by the valor of his arm, won by the valor of his arm, of the empire of Trebizond, at the very least. And so it was that with these exceedingly agreeable thoughts, and carried away by the extraordinary pleasure he took in them, he hastened to put into effect what he so fervently desired. And the first thing he did was to attempt to clean some armor that had belonged to his great-grandfathers, and stained with rust and covered with mildew. He had spent many long years stored and forgotten in a corner. He did the best he could to clean and repair it, but he saw that it had a great defect, which was that instead of a full sallet helmet with an attached neck guard, There was only a simple headpiece. But he compensated for this with his industry, and out of pasteboard he fashioned a kind of half-helmet that, when attached to the headpiece, took on the appearance of a full sallet. It is true that in order to test if it was strong and could withstand a blow, he took out his sword and struck it twice, and with the first blow he undid it in a moment what it had taken him a week to create. He cannot help being disappointed at the ease with which he had hacked it into pieces. And to protect against that danger, he had made another one, placing strips of iron on the inside, so that he was satisfied with its strength and not wanting to put it to test again. He designated and accepted it as extremely fine sallet.